In Geneva today, high-stakes diplomacy unfolds as United States envoy Steve Witkoff and Secretary of State Marco Rubio meet Ukrainian and European officials to weigh Trump's 28-point peace plan. Kiev faces a wrenching choice: accept painful concessions, ceding territory, limiting its military, and forging NATO, or risk losing vital United States support. European allies call the proposal a starting point but demand additional work, wary of rewarding the other side. With Putin signaling cautious openness and Zelensky warning of a threat to Ukraine's dignity, the world watches. Can peace be forged without surrender? Welcome to Think Tank.
Our world is becoming unhinged.
Axios has repeated that President Donald Trump has introduced a 28 plan urging Ukraine to cede territory and constitutionally renounce NATO membership alongside capping its military size. Developed with United States and Russian envoys, the proposal aims for a swift end to the conflict under an aggressive timeline. The plan involves major global shifts, including lifting sanctions on Russia, utilizing frozen Russian assets for Ukraine's reconstruction, granting amnesty for wartime actions, and potentially restoring Russia to the G8. This framework presents a complex trade-off between territorial losses and a massive recovery package. Although Kiev views the proposal as a negotiating vision, President Zelensky has not dismissed discussions. The live document indicates significant pressure for a resolution, balancing Russia's global reintegration with security guarantees for Ukraine. According to Le Monde, a high-level meeting in Geneva, including US, Ukrainian and European officials, is underway to urgently discuss President Trump's peace proposal for Ukraine. European capitals are deeply concerned, likening the plan, which mandates territorial cessions and a NATO freeze for Kiev, to a punitive treaty that heavily favors Moscow's demands. European leaders are cautiously working to rewrite the core document without fracturing the crucial transatlantic alliance, despite viewing the United States proposal as highly contentious. This diplomatic tightrope walk highlights Europe's fear of becoming a passive observer in a war on its own continent, risking both Ukraine's security and NATO's stability at the same time. As the clock ticks, their priority is to forge a modified proposal that secures Kiev's interests while preserving the essential US military backing against further Russian aggression. The New York Times has highlighted that US and Ukrainian delegations, joined by European officials, met in Geneva to address President Trump's peace plan. Despite the contentious nature of the draft, which was created without initial input from Kyiv or its European allies, President Zelensky's delegation is present to defend Ukraine's national interests. European leaders, including Britain, France and Germany, have jointly called the plan a starting point that requires additional work and urged changes to the most objectionable points. The intense diplomatic engagement underscores the high stakes involved, while the United States pushes for a swift end to the conflict. Kyiv and its European partners are focused on preventing any agreement that could invite future Russian attacks, signaling a crucial struggle over the final terms of the peace. In Geneva, high-stakes diplomacy unfolds as Ukraine, the United States and European allies confront Trump's controversial peace blueprint, forcing Kyiv to weigh sovereignty against survival, with a November 27 deadline looming.
Today in Geneva, high-stakes diplomacy unfolds. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff meet Ukrainian, British, French, German, and EU security chiefs, not to impose peace, but to test the viability of President Trump's 28-point plan to end the war. The proposal demands Ukraine cede territory, slash its military, and renounce NATO. Trump insists it's not final, but gave Kyiv until November 27th to respond. Yet Europe is alarmed. European allies excluded from drafting call the plan a basis requiring additional work. They reject any settlement that rewards invasion or leave Ukraine defenseless. A counter-proposal is already circulating in Brussels, and Kyiv faces an existential choice. President Zelensky warns Ukraine risks either the loss of dignity or the loss of a key partner. He has proposed alternatives, but time is short and winter deepens. Behind the diplomatic maneuvering lies a grim reality on the ground, with Russian strikes crippling critical infrastructure. Over 7 million Ukrainians face winter without reliable heat or power. Humanitarian agencies warn that prolonged negotiations could deepen civilian suffering, making rapid, credible security guarantees not just a political necessity, but a moral imperative. Meanwhile, confusion reigns in Washington. Senators say Rubio called the plan a Russian wish list. Rubio denies it, claiming U.S. authorship with input from both sides. The White House remains silent. As talks begin, one truth endures: peace cannot be dictated, it must be secured. And for Ukraine, the cost of compromise may be sovereignty itself.
And to provide more analysis, joining us from Florida, Mr. Justin Thomas Russell, Global Foreign Policy Center Executive Director, and from London, Mr. Meher Nicolas Ferzili, Director of EU ASEAN Center. A very warm welcome to both our distinguished guests. We start off with Mr. Russell. Can Washington truly present this as a US-authored peace plan when even its own senators call it a Russian wish list?
Well, it's good to be with you again, Rana, as always. Look, this plan, as it moves forward, has all the benefits for Russia and not many benefits for Kyiv. The fact that Donald Trump put this plan forward with several points that doesn't guarantee security for Ukraine, limits its ability to maintain a military, which is its right as a sovereign country, even stages some of the new French fighter jets that it acquired through the EU as part of its defense mechanism. Those have to be staged in Poland. And then the ultimate is giving away land that not only Russia has taken, but stuff that Ukraine has taken back to Russia. This is a Russian proposal, not a peace proposal. Now, to the credit of President Trump, this is a starting point, as he put out. This is a point where he made the bar so astronomically, ludicrously high that they have to come up with a deal that is satisfactory to everybody. But right now, as the 28-point plan as it's presented in Geneva right now, there's no downside for Russia and there's no upside for Kyiv.
Mr. Ferzili, can Europe rewrite Trump's plan without breaking transatlantic unity, or is it already sidelined in shaping peace?
I think this took Europe by surprise. When I say Europe, I mean the EU, of course, Germany, France, the EU Commission, also Britain. 4 days ago, they were shaken and they were taken by surprise. And remember, for Europe, in the past 8 months, they've had three gigantic negative surprises. The first one was in April of this year when Trump started his trade global import tax war. In April of this year, it was a big surprise. The second one on the 29th of July, when Ursula von der Leyen, speaking in the name of Europe, she went to Scotland and she completely surrendered to Trump, agreeing to a punitive 15% import duty. More importantly, agreeing to force the biggest private sector industrial companies in Germany and France in the next 5 years to invest trillions of dollars in new factories in Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, as opposed to in Europe. So that was a second huge defeat. And 4 days ago, with the leak of the draft peace plan to end the Russian-Ukraine war, it was another blow in the face of the Europeans. So they've had a bad year, and it's all interconnected. Why is it interconnected? Because it's all part of the same painful birth of a new world, and that world, you could call it the age of geoeconomics, or the age of Trump, or the age of industrial nationalism. We're entering a new era, and all the neoliberal.
Sir, you said we're entering a new era. Could you please elaborate more on this point? We're entering a new era. What do you mean by this?
I mean that at this stage, the White House and the European, they're speaking different languages, and the Europeans can't even understand what the Americans are. What does it mean? They're focusing relentlessly on one issue, the techno-industrial rivalry with China. It is their obsession. They're obsessed by that. Infrastructure, civil engineering, microchips, rare earth minerals with China. And to them, Ukraine is a distraction. They couldn't care less. To them, Europe and Britain are irrelevant. And to them, Russia is a pivot nation in the new great game, the new giant great game, pitting the Chinese dragon against the American eagle. There are only two superpowers left. And guess what? The EU is not a superpower. It will never be a superpower, in spite of the delusional speeches of von der Leyen, Macron, and Merz, right? Europe is completely out. And because they're out, they're losing control of their own destiny. So who's deciding now the future of the Russian-Ukraine war? It is America. It is not Germany and France. They're out of the game. And Trump wants to finish that war at all costs, even if the cost means concession to Russia. He couldn't care less, because he doesn't want Russia to be completely in the Chinese orbit. If the
Trump wants to finish the war, thankfully, and he put a 28 plan. But oppositely, on the other side, there's the European Union and there's Kyiv or Ukraine. Are they happy with this ceasefire?
No, of course, the Europeans
or
are unhappy.
plan?
They are unhappy. They are in shock.
They're in shock. So the only winner out of this is supposedly to be Russia.
Yeah, the plan is unacceptable for Germany, France, Britain, the European Union.
The European Union. Okay, Mr. Ferzili, I'll be back again. Mr. Russell, if Trump insists the plan isn't final, why impose a Thursday deadline that pressures Kyiv into a corner?
It's a very good question, right? And I don't think anybody truly understands. Look, Donald Trump right now politically is having a little bit of heartburn here in the United States. His popularity polls are at an all-time low. He's not winning on the economic front, and he's still got an Epstein file problem. That being said, where he seems to be gaining some momentum is on the international front. when he starts, he's getting high marks for his solution to the Gaza question. He goes around claiming that he is, helped stop 7 or 8 different wars. We're still trying to figure that out. But, he does get some high rankings for his ability to try and bring people to the table. That being said, again, this is kind of Donald Trump's building a high skyscraper in Manhattan mentality, is come to the table with an offer that is so ludicrous that they can only go further down to sensible compromise from his proposal. I mean, look, let's be clear. There's a lot of non-starters in the 28-point plan. One of the big ones is, and it's still being kind of interpreted as to its meaning, is, immunity from any sort of actions taken by Russia during this conflict. Is that getting Vladimir Putin out of possible war crimes charges? That's going to be a non-starter for Ukrainians. That's a slap in the face to the Ukrainians.
A Russian wish list, like we mentioned in the report, sir, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Look, the Trump plan is basically a surrender document to Vladimir Zelensky and the Ukrainian people. It is a wish list for Vladimir Putin and the Russians. Basically, what has happened is Donald Trump puts this in front, and hopefully they'll be negotiating some sort of compromise to this plan in Geneva. However, one of the things you have to realize is that there are key points in here. I mean, look, this benefits Trump's friends. It gets Vladimir Putin out of possible charges for war crimes. It helps out his partners and his best friends in Europe by allowing just 1 or 2 countries to buy Russian oil. Everybody else is forbidden from buying Russian oil, and it's absolutely just a document that looks like it was put forward by the Kremlin, not by the White House.
Mr. Russell, Kyiv said President Zelensky warned Ukraine risks either the loss of dignity or the loss of a key partner. How do you read this?
Well, I think it's political theater for Vladimir Zelensky. Look, Vladimir Zelensky needs the support of the American people. He needs the support of the U.S. government and the U.S. military. He needs U.S. diplomatic support. I think what it is just kind of showing them the fact that, we're not doing any favors to our so-called friends in Ukraine. The back and forth, we've seen the Trump position go from, throwing Vladimir Zelensky out of the Oval Office to being his best friend in the global community, to just within the past hour, Donald Trump went on a large-scale social media tirade saying that the Ukrainians don't appreciate how much the U.S. has done for them, and says you got until Thanksgiving to figure out this deal. You don't do that to friends, particularly the fact in a deal that rewards bad behavior, like giving
But you
land
always
to
mention,
Russia.
sir, that this is Trump's way when he wants to reach a deal, a negotiating deal.
Sure, this is straight out of his playbook. This is how Trump operates on the diplomatic side. And I don't.
And he also said as well
correct.
that if he was the president of the United States, this war would never have taken place.
Yeah, you know what? Donald Trump can armchair quarterback that all day long. There's no proof that says one way or another that that's true. Donald Trump has a horrible tendency to go back and relive history. And right now, what we need is to go from this day forward. Donald Trump really needs, and quite frankly, the State Department and the U.S. government need to start focusing forward thinking instead of trying to reimagine what could have been if Trump had won and Biden had lost. It doesn't help the current situation. There's no telling, and quite frankly, let's be clear. Vladimir Putin could say that. Vladimir Putin could say a lot of things. Vladimir Putin really does not have a lot of credibility in the public eye
Mr.
globally
Russell, I'll be
when
back
it comes
again. I'll leave
to.
it there. Mr. Ferzilli, Germany, France, and Britain call the proposal a basis needing work. But can they offer Ukraine security guarantees the United States won't?
Sorry, can you repeat the question, please?
Of course, sir. Germany, France, and Britain call the proposal a basis needing work. But can they offer, Britain and Germany and France, can they offer Ukraine security guarantees the US won't offer?
No, absolutely not. So the thing is, the French, the German, the British, NATO, excluding America, cannot offer any credible security guarantee to Ukraine. And that's why they're in shock, because without massive American support, they cannot offer, normally what they would want to do, the French and the Germans, is to propose counter offers, to say, okay, this is the American draft plan, we don't like it, but we in Paris, London, and Berlin have another alternative to offer to the Ukrainians, right? But in reality, and that is their problem, they are cornered. So what Trump did 5 days ago, he put them in a corner, and it's checkmate. So Europe doesn't have the financial, material, military capacity to offer any alternative. And what's interesting, one of the main points of the draft American-Russian communique is to say that there will never, ever be any EU or NATO soldiers on Ukrainian soil. Now, that's a big blow to the Europeans. One of the main reasons why the Europeans backed Ukraine blindly in the past 3 years was a war by proxy. So they were using, in essence, a puppet government, because that's what Zelensky is. It's a puppet government. They was using him to basically poke the Russian bear. But they don't have the capacity now that the truce or the end of the war is being negotiated, they don't have the capacity to advance strategic interest. And for them, for the Germans and the French, advancing strategic interest, what does it mean? It would have meant, for example, negotiating the presence of German, French military bases on Ukrainian soil, negotiating the association or inclusion of Ukraine under a NATO umbrella. All that is gone. All that is gone by fiat of Trump. And here, I would disagree politely with Justin Russell. I think, in Congress on Capitol Hill, in the media, many people have the Cold War mentality. And so many people think we are in the year 1990, right? When Soviet Russia was a superpower. Soviet Russia is no longer a superpower. It has been dismantled 35 years ago. Today, Russia is a mid-sized pivot nation. That's it. It cannot challenge neither America nor China. So when I hear terms like, capitulation, no, America is not capitulating because Russia is not playing in the same league as America. Russia, once again, there's only one league. We have two big players. It's China. The rivalry, the military, industrial, tech rivalry is only with China. So no one is capitulating, but there are right-wing, neoconservative, and Democrat liberal hawks on Capitol Hill, and they are accusing Trump of being weak or capitulating. Nothing is further from the truth, right? The Cold War ended 35 years ago. No one is capitulating because Russia is not the enemy of America. This is the essential idea.
Mr. Russell, does offering frozen Russian assets from Ukraine's reconstruction risk legitimizing Moscow's land grabs?
No, I mean, look, Russia needs to pay for its bad actions. Russia needs to be held accountable for their illegal and unjustified and unprovoked invasion of its neighboring sovereign country. There has to be accountability for Moscow and for Vladimir Putin.
Russia needs to pay, sir, or the United States does not want to pay at this point anymore?
Look, the United States, this is going to be a global rebuild. If not, it's going to be a largely NATO, EU, US, Western Hemisphere rebuild. Absolutely, Russia needs to pay for the damage it's caused. If we if we say, okay, you know what, we're going to give all these frozen assets back to Moscow and Vladimir Putin, all that does is reward Russia, and there's no justification for Vladimir Putin not to do this again. There's got to be security guarantees. One of the things I want to point out, though, is I know everybody's kind of focusing on the NATO. Can the EU provide security guarantees? One of the things we have to look at is there is a way that NATO can do security guarantees without there actually being a NATO membership for Ukraine.
Then
One
why
of the ways
don't
that
why
people
don't
are
we
talking
why
about
don't
is
we go
that-
towards what you're talking about, sir?
what's that?
Why don't we go after what you're saying, we're mentioning now?
Well, I mean, look, Rana, the reality is that there seems to be a kind of trend in Washington when it puts these type of peace deals or it interacts with Moscow to kind of placate a little bit of Vladimir Putin, and it kind of makes the it makes the punitive damages for Moscow minimal. That can't be the case. We have to show that when you take illegal and unjustified actions in the global community like Vladimir Putin and the Russian government have in this illegal war against Ukraine, and unjustified, mind you, there has to be some sort of ramifications. There has to be accountability. If they get off scot-free or with minimal punitive action, then what is the offset? What is the deterrence from saying don't do this again? There is none.
Mr. Russell, thank you very much. That was Mr. Thomas Russell, Global Foreign Policy Center Executive Director, and Mr. Meher Nicholas Frzili, Director of EU ASEAN Center. Thank you both for your special insights and your valuable discussion as Geneva talks hinge on sovereignty versus survival. Ukraine's choice echoes beyond borders. Can peace endure if built on concessions that embolden facto against facture alliance? The world holds its breath. That brings us to the end of today's episode of Think Tank, which always unveils the complexities of changing world. Thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for more updates on Qnews.